All righty. Well, thank you all for joining us today on the LinkedIn Live with the Education Committee and the Esports Trade Association. We have quite the panel today. It's going to be a fun conversation about global esports and trends that we're seeing in higher education from a perspective of just what's happening around the world. I am Brandon Brunhammer. I am the co-chair with April on the Education Committee. And I am the Director of Research, Learning, and Simulation for AVI SPL. We're a large AV integrator. So I'm going to pass it to April and let her introduce herself, and then we'll kind of go down the route.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brandon. And this panel's amazing. You guys are in for a treat. My name's April Welch. I'm the Associate Vice President for Strategic Initiatives at the Illinois Institute of Technology. And like Brandon said, I am co-chair with him for the ESTA Education Committee. So we are thrilled to do our best to bring you information and really usable information about education and esports.
Awesome. We will. I'll pass it over to Nick.
Hi there, I'm Nick Turner, based just outside London in the UK. I'm a course leader at Queen Mary's College in Basingstoke. I also have a consultancy company which specialises in esports and education, and I sit with April and Brandon on the Education Committee at the Esports Trade Association.
Awesome. We'll jump over to Gabriel.
Hi, my name is Gabriel Achusikanku. I'm a co-founder of Esports Africa News and Esports Africa Tournament. And basically, it's to educate, empower, and entertain through esports, game development, and animation. I'm here to share the African perspective of scholastic esports education and education in general in the esports game development ecospace.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. And then, Callum, I'm going to go to you.
Last but not least, hi everyone. Callum Neal. I am Head of Education at British Esports Federation. We are the national body for esports in the United Kingdom, and a few things directly linked to education, especially within my role, is we run the British Esports Student Champs. Last season, we had over 3,000 people take part, and we're anticipating that this year over 7,000 students will take part in that. And then we also co-created with Pearson, who are our awarding organisation partner. Back in 2020, we launched the BTEC qualifications in esports, which are a mixture of business, creative media, sport and esports modules and units that allow students then to progress onto university. So I was one of the writers on that qualification, and we have that qualification now in over 100 centres in the UK. It's also available for international delivery as well. So we do have some international students, and we've had about 5,500 students that have gone through those qualifications over the last 3 years. Great to meet everyone.
Awesome. Well, looking forward to the conversation and what is to come for this specific topic of global trends within esports and just the higher education aspect. Everybody here is heavily involved with developing and creating and cultivating the ecosystem of esports in higher education. Nick, last year I had the opportunity to come and see and check out your facility, which is fantastic. You guys have done a great job. But one of the things I wanted to just kick it off with is, what are the trends that we're starting to see within Africa and within the UK? And, I can kind of speak to some of the stuff in the US, just about things that are starting to develop. And I know, April, you've got an amazing program at Illinois Tech. But Nick, let me kind of jump to you real quick and just kind of start the conversation of what created the entirety of your facility, because it's more than just an esports gaming facility.
Yeah, I mean, what we've got here at QMC is we have two gaming arenas, which are great for the competitive element, like Callum just talked about, where we compete in the BEF Student Championships. And I will drop that in that we won the Overwatch Division 1 Championships last year.
There you go.
But it's essentially an education centre. So we have classrooms. We have esports labs, which is sort of like sponsored and through investment from companies, which enables us to operate. We've got a Pilates room, just kind of like to illustrate that point that esports isn't teenagers sat in the dark playing. There's fitness, and certainly from Callum's perspective, when he was in writing the BTEC, the BTEC is a very well kind of rounded and well balanced qualification that enables so much more than just the gaming. The gaming is actually not really part of the formal education. That's the bonus, the add-on, and you don't even need to study the qualification to be part of the competitive scene, which is great because it opens it up to students around the whole college. And our enrichment programs that we run and facilitate at lunchtimes and after school are the busiest out of all of the things in college. We, during enrollment time, which is a couple of months before they start in the September of the new academic year, we always have to shut it off because we've got too many people. And then on the first day for trials, when they come to trial out to get into the QM Samurai team, they're literally queuing out of the door and filling the fields to get in, which is a really scary concept, but at the same time really exciting. So it's foremost an educational center for that basis, and that has developed and come through Callum's work, James, my colleague here, his work, to produce this qualification, which I think you would agree, Callum, started off igniting interest in the wider realm of those people outside of esports, and that kind of igniting interest has suddenly turned into something of an educational revolution here, in that it's the focal point of further education between kind of 16 and 18-year-olds, and due to that, it's then gone and affected higher education for universities and degrees. And I'm sure Callum can talk more about how it's impacting on schools, because I'm sure that will be the next thing. But either way, the introduction of that BTEC qualification has revolutionized that formal education of esports, probably in a more impressive way than even the British Esports Federation thought it might. I don't know. I can't speak for them, Callum.
Yeah, it's been a fantastic 3 years, really, in terms of that growth and rewinding the clocks back, if you like, to 2018, 2019, when we started to have these conversations around the need for esports education programs. We had a real gap in the UK in our education system, and I think globally as well, we've seen that gap in that. In 2018, we had the first university degree that launched in the UK. We also noticed at the time that US colleges and universities were offering esports scholarships the same way that they'd offered traditional sporting scholarships. Now, we've sent students to the US for years on sporting scholarships, and in speaking to the students that were coming through our education system about what they wanted to do, esports was a constant theme, and video games was a constant theme. And other than studying something like games design, which is great, which is a career path on its own, there was nothing then for this other group of students, which is a lot of students, by the way, that had this real interest and this real passion, some of which secondary school and high school education wasn't for them, and they'd fallen out of love for whatever reason. They might have struggled for whatever reason. It may be that environment just wasn't the right environment for some students. And in looking at these programs now that we've developed, students are able to find this passion point and this one thing that they've all got in common, this one thing that they love, that excites them. I think for us as teachers, it's one of the hardest things as an educator, thinking about how am I going to engage this group of people that are coming into my room in this next session. And we're able to develop a pedagogical approach through esports education, through play, through fun, which we can't underestimate the power of in classrooms, and hook into that passion that young people have. And as a result of that, now, as I said, we're in our third year of these programs. We've had over 5,500 students study the qualifications, but it's the impact that's really significant in terms of where these people are then going. That the program isn't just about getting people into esports careers. It's the broad range and the diverse range of the curriculum that we've now seen students go off into the military, into the public services, onto business degrees, into law, into enterprise, entrepreneurship, finance, events management. Then we've got the creative subjects, all the things around production and development of esports and journalism. And then also the sporting nature, as Nick mentioned, the units in there such as health, well-being and fitness and psychology, nutrition, esports coaching. So we've got students that are going off to such a diverse array of career pathways now. And I think that's the beauty about esports is we talk about transferable skills a lot that are developed through esports. But when we start to develop that curriculum offer and students are now leaving us with qualifications as well as experiences, then we're now seeing this real impact in terms of where students are going as well and where they're progressing to.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting, you know, the similarities in general from the ecosystem of esports across, you know, both the UK platform and here in the States. And I'll let April hit on that a little bit here in a second. But Gabriel, I just kind of want to task you with understanding what your environment and ecosystem looks like in Africa and just how you guys are developing and what are some of the trends that you're seeing within the requirements for the facilities there.
I think in Europe and America, you're probably a few steps ahead of what's happening in Africa now. The interest has just begun in terms of the formal introduction of esports into the educational stream, because we're having a lot of STEM educational activities, and esports, it's sort of getting introduced by the day, because we got involved in a few STEM educational summits or educational conferences, and what we introduced them was the virtual reality, the Minecraft, using such events to introduce them into esports. So we are coming up, but it's baby steps.
Awesome. Yeah, no, and that's fantastic to hear. Now, what kind of drove, you know, the desire and the drive to cultivate that ecosystem within Africa? What ignites that passion within you to be able to drive that?
All right, so I'll confess I'm located in England.
Yeah.
So I have the visibility of Europe, America, Asia.
Yep.
But I'm originally from Ghana, and I've got loads of contacts across Africa. So the interest came about because I found a niche market that was interested and growing in Europe that could be applied to Africa, but it was being done already there. So I didn't start anything. I just joined the forces. The great guys across the continent doing loads of great things, from game development to esports teams to esports associations. I cannot begin to mention names here because it might look like I'm favoring others than more than the others. But what is happening in Africa is, I'd say it's more like a tsunami. It just needs the breakthrough. Once the floodgates open, what is going to happen? It will be more than Asia, because if you look at the African population, the pyramid is such that the base is so wide, and the number of young people involved or with skills that are capable of transcending into gaming, esports, and the eco space is massive. The only issue is a few limitations: internet, access to hardware, access to structured. That's the only limitation, but it's coming up.
Awesome. That's fantastic to hear. And just the understanding the development there and just the growth and the potential of growth. I mean, obviously we're seeing it in the UK, we're seeing it in the US, we're seeing the foundation of standards, you know, which kind of points me to April. I mean, you've done some phenomenal things at Illinois Tech, and just the program that you're developing there, and then the ecosystem that you're cultivating there, just as we've heard across, you know, from the UK side as well. It's just so much more than gaming. And I know we talk about it a lot, but let's kind of talk about what your facility is like and just kind of what are the targets there, and kind of how you're growing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Brandon, for your kind words. And it's been a passion and a pleasure. Like, they say you never go to work if you love what you do. And esports has been just an absolute joy. And I've got so many students from all over the world. IIT has kids from, not kids, young professionals from over 100 different countries. And one of them who I was just talking to is fantastic. He's got his own business right now. He's doing well, but he credits all of that to the esports experience he had with us. No offense to his mechanical engineering teachers, but he says that the confidence that he developed by playing. He plays Rainbow Six. And their team was amazing. But he credits his ability to communicate. He credits a lot of the growth, that confidence to really stand up for what you believe in, all of the things that he learned managing an esports team and competing against other schools and competing even within our own school for resources around from different clubs and organizations, and really, competing to make the case that esports is important, and it serves, as stress reliever. It serves as a community builder. It serves in so many different ways on a college campus when you've got people who are identifying what they're going to do with their lives and who they want to be and how they want to interact with each other. In addition to all of the things that you need to get through school, you get real life experience. I consider esports like emotional simulation. So my students learn how to fail and learn how to win and learn how to get back up and get back up and get back up. So our GPA for my esport, we've got over 100 competitive players on our esports team, and our GPA is higher than the average for those. And I think one of the things that's really exciting in the space right now is that high schools and middle schools are finally recognizing the value of investing in esports programs in the same way that they used to automatically invest in physical sports. They are now investing in esports. So that's really exciting on our front. From the collegiate level, more and more we started giving scholarships out very early. Robert Morris and Kirk Melcher were the first to give collegiate scholarships out back in 2012, I think 2011, 2012. And we were shortly right after them in like 2014. And I think that makes the case for programs like what Nick was talking about and what Gabriel was talking about, because then you can say, all right, here's your next step. Because you are at this level or because you show this interest, this gives you an inroads to college. And then once we get here in this ecosystem, all of the benefits that you get from playing traditional sports, you can derive from esports. And we have more titles and more a level playing field. I say, I've got girls that can play that are not going to be able to be playing, football against the guys, but they can hold their own in Overwatch.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting, when we talk about these facilities and the standards and just the technology that's going into them, and we're evaluating it. Nick and I have had this conversation quite a few times, just from the perspective of how it's growing and the need for content creation booths and shoutcasting and what the record capabilities and the broadcast capabilities, streaming. And as we start to look at each element, even down to graphic design and game development, one of the big things that are driving is, especially in the Midwest, what we're noticing here in the U.S. As a designer, is that we're wanting to create these complexes that create more availability for technology across the entire ecosystem.
Yeah.
And just as Nick and April, as you guys and Gabriel, have all mentioned from the perspective of what you're looking at from the ecosystem and what you guys have implemented in your buildings and your facilities. Nick, when I did the walkthrough with you and you pointed out your Pilates room, I'm not gonna lie, I was really taken back by that, because that is not something that I typically associated with when it came to esports in any circumstance. But it's true. I mean, when we do a lot of the pro applications here in the US, they all have, you know, PT rooms, they all have gyms, they have some facilities have full catered systems the entire day. And yeah, we're talking about pro level, but in the same perspective, it's still a requirement that's needed. And as we kind of look at how that's evolving and those standards and what is kind of the expectation from an education perspective, can you guys touch on what that's looking like, what the requests are from your students, how that's growing, and kind of the requirements of expectation when they show up at your facilities?
Callum, did you want to start? Did you want to start on that one? I've got something to say about kind of like that progression to university, but from the British Esports Federation perspective.
Yeah, definitely. It's again going back to the development of the qualifications. We have mandatory units and optional units, and it was very key and clear to us at the point in terms of the intent of our programs that health, well-being, and fitness was going to be a mandatory element. Which some people, as you say, they don't associate the two. And lots of our students who will come in onto these programs, some may have never done any physical activity in their lives before. On the other end of the spectrum, some of the students are also in the sports teams and have played sports all their life. So we've got a real mix and a real balance. And I think where health, wellbeing, and fitness is key is that we should be promoting esports as part of a healthy and balanced lifestyle, just in the same way that we would promote any sport. You know, you can be addicted to certain sports. If you go out on too many long distance runs, it's not good for your physical and social health. You can get injured quite easily, you know. So there's balance and moderation to everything, and that's the first key point. And we're not trying to turn esports players into weightlifters or marathon runners, absolutely not. But what this is about is that appreciation of a balanced lifestyle, how having an unhealthy lifestyle can have a negative impact, how it can bring on cardiovascular diseases, it can bring on other diseases a lot earlier in life, how it can affect longevity as a player. You know, if you want to have a longer career, how it has an impact on things like focus and concentration and reaction times. And there are some very simple ways that we can do this. You know, I don't want people listening to me thinking we need this huge facility, we need all sorts of health, well-being, and fitness. You know, a Pilates room, a space. In my previous role at Barnsley College, we had an empty classroom that we used and that we developed into that space where we could do virtual reality, where we could do health and well-being. I've just seen James O'Hagan in the chat there. I was speaking to James about this on a podcast last week, that one of the exercises that I would recommend, and one of the things that I always do with students when we first meet them, to get them to buy into that and to get them to sort of understand that there's a link, because some of them don't get it, is we'll go into a game, whatever that game may be, and we'll record some statistics. And one of the things that I would do to start with would be a relaxation technique called proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation, where we're trying to simulate relaxation. It's a great technique for stress, for anxiety, which links to the psychology unit. And then we put them straight into a competitive game and we record the data. And you know, it might be a game of Fortnite, and we'll go, right, tell us how long it takes to get your first elimination in the game, and then how you score in that game. And it takes around 3 to 4 minutes usually for somebody to wake up and get their first one. And then I'd take them outside, I'd take them down the stairs, I'd take them to a walk on campus, something simple to get the blood flowing, get the heart rate going. Again, we're not talking crazy fitness things here. And then we do the exact same experiment. And every time I've done it, we've had an increase, and people are then getting on quicker, they're getting these eliminations quicker, they're scoring quicker. So just to show people that this can be really simple, but these students that are coming through our education system now, yes, we all want to be players. I still want to be a player, but I don't think it's going to happen, unfortunately. These students, they are going to become the next teachers, the next coaches of the next generation. And I think it's so important that whilst we've got all the benefits of digital, we're able to transfer that into the benefits of health and well-being and fitness as well.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And, you know, I kind of look to Gabriel to understand, as you're kind of at the very beginning and building phase, and, you know, we've got some established programs here on this panel. what are you looking for? What are you trying to cultivate as you're developing this ecosystem within Africa? And just what are you looking at, and how are you evaluating that entirety?
So there are lessons to be learned, and also there are values to be shared. So I'll go first with the lessons learned. Of course, Callum talked about this exercise he does before the game, which is interesting because we do something similar but slightly different. So what we focus on is trying to educate the masses on esports, game development, as an option to career path. So the idea being that the more people understand, the more people appreciate, the more people come to the realization that it's an alternative. It's actually a real career path, educational path, an alternative to the formal education. Then we'll take it from there. But on the last Friday of every month, one thing that we're keen to sort of promote is mental health. So the last Friday of every month, we've got this program where we don't game, we just come in and play certain games. We've got our own traditional board games. I don't know, Ludo is quite popular with everybody, but we play it differently. And then there's what do you call them? They're like traditional marble games, draft. We try to do something totally out of not tech wise. Sometimes we do cooking, or sometimes we just do something, play a game, funny games in there, just so people understand that you don't always have to be behind a console or a PC or having a gadget in your hands. You need to come away from all these and try to have a social life, try to have another aspect of your life. And sometimes you just chat over a podcast or making coffee, different kinds of coffee, different kinds of tea. So it's a different style of engaging people, relaxing with people, but also helps educate us on our mental health and looking at our physical bodies. So it's growing, but it's not as regimented as or maybe advanced as what Callum says. I'll be interested to learn how the monitoring is done, because it might be a way of us over the period understanding how people have developed either mentally or physically from some of these activities that we've done.
That's awesome. Yeah. And we kind of think about, first and foremost, I love the concept of sitting down and playing just traditional games as well, keeping the mind strong, but also being away from, technology, which I understand. We're all about technology. Don't get me wrong there. I mean, tech to the future, right? Yes. There, April. But the reality of it is like, we're so engrossed and immersed in technology that it's a fantastic concept to be able to take a step back and do something traditional and be interactive with one another, beyond just being on a screen. That's a fantastic concept, and I love that. Coming from a person that virtually races in cycling, so I do a lot of Zwift racing and that kind of stuff. So having the ability to take my bike and be able to go race in real person definitely transitions the mind, still using those muscle memory skills, still being able to strengthen the mind physically in the same perspective, but it's just completely different atmosphere to race on a bike in the environment as opposed to racing virtually on a bike. So I think that's a fantastic concept. One of the things that I would kind of gear to now is, in the US, as esports starts to develop standards, depending on which league or depending on which group you are affiliated with, has different regulations. From a tech perspective, there's not like a specific if this then that requirement, whereas I know you guys in the UK have really developed and cultivated kind of a set level of standard. I'll open it to both both of you guys in the UK, and then kind of April, I kind of want to hear your feedback off of what they're saying, because they do have a pretty solid level of standard.
Yeah, I mean, I think the BTEC has it's been designed in such a way which is really clever, in that you don't need to have a college full of specialist esports lecturers to deliver it. Yes, there are some units that you need a good understanding of, and at times certain games and mechanics and strategies involved in those games. But essentially, based on the normal staffing that you would have at a college in the UK, almost anybody could, any college should be able to deliver that qualification. So that's kind of like set that standard. And like Callum's already said, it's such a broad range of topics and modules. I think there's 20 modules in total that cover a whole range of things, from IT to health and well-being, video production, games design, business, enterprise. That it has set that standard, and what that has done as a repercussion, and again, not repercussion, a development, which I'll be interested to hear if Callum kind of agrees with my thinking, is that prior to the release of the BTEC, there were only a handful of universities that ran esports degrees. And they came off the back of things like Newell, who organised the champions, the competitive scene, because the gaming societies, the esports societies at university were so popular that, you know, this kind of like network developed. And university saw the benefit in that and the attraction in that. So they designed esports, but they had no esports degrees rather, but they had no basis. They had no, they were starting from scratch really. And what the BTEC has done, because it's been introduced nationally, and like we say, close to 200 centres that are running it, thousands and thousands of students that are studying on those courses, that's changed the perspective of higher education. So all of a sudden, universities are re-evaluating their degrees that they wrote prior to the BTEC 5 years ago, because they're not quite tallying up, or they're not matching, or the students at the BTEC have been exposed to a much wider set of concepts that they're not being catered for. And what that's meant is that some universities have retracted. So they've either stopped the course that they were running, usually with a view to re-emerge, you know, rewrite it and come up with something different. New universities are, or new courses are being written and were being written during that phase of launch for the BTEC. And now what we're finding is, because of the popularity of the college course, we've now got more and more universities undoubtedly looking to run esports degrees. I've just finished writing one for a university, which hopefully will be validated in the next couple of months. And that is very much based on progression from the BTEC. You know, that's kind of part of the rationale, is in the students would have studied the BTEC and they can go on to do this degree, which follows in that pathway. And as that expands, as more universities do that and use that BTEC, some will go down the sport route, some will go down the games design route, some will go down the content creation, some will go down strategy, some will go business. But hopefully it means we're going to open everything up to all of those options, because from my, you know, the evidence that I see with the students every day in the classroom is that they all want to work in esports, but doing different things. You know, I've got one student who studies esports, law, and chemistry. She studies law because she wants to be a lawyer, but she wants to specialize in esports law. You know, I've got lots of, like Callum said, we've got lots of sports students that do half of the week or 3/4 of the week doing sport, and then they do a quarter of the week doing esports. But they want to, because all those skills are transferable, and across the qualification, those transferable skills can go into so many other things, and that doesn't need to be in esports. But already we're seeing the impact of these qualifications in terms of kind of like business and where the students are going on to, where they're working. I know April mentioned it earlier about that business side of things, and Callum mentioned the variety of places they go. You know, I've got 16-year-olds who are running their own little orgs, and some of them are kind of like doing quite well. And we've got one who, you know, they are now a private limited company registered at Companies House. You know, there's 4 17-year-olds. You know, they have sponsorship. I've had recently, they've been pitching their business ideas as one of the units. And 2 of those pitches have actually said, oh, actually, this is quite a good idea. And so they're now trying to implement those enterprises. You know, they've started them, and one of them's already, admittedly, he hasn't done his work for me, but he has set up his enterprise, and that's going okay. I mean, that's kind of how I see, when I talked earlier about the BTEC has revolutionized education in the UK, that's what I mean about it's changing that whole structure. You know, right. Would you agree there, Callum?
Yes, definitely. That growth at university level has definitely coincided with the growth that we've had on the BTEC. I think, go back to 2018, we had the first esports degree. Now, ready for September, we're going to have over 40 esports related degrees just in the UK. And a key driver of that is definitely the BTEC. But interestingly as well, when I go and visit universities and I'll speak to students. So our official university partner at British Esports is College of Esports in London, and in speaking to some of their students, some had gone through the BTEC, but some were also from these other educational backgrounds. So I think that's quite unique as well, in that in vocational areas of study, people tend to be funneled just into the one area. And I think what's unique about esports is that we've got people coming in onto the BTEC that are then going off into these other areas. But then also that other way around as well is that these esports degrees are providing opportunities for people who may have studied other subjects. And I think that's just testament to those standards around the qualification. The other aspect of the standards as well, I think, is around the technology and is around what's being implemented in these classrooms. And as part of the qualification, and again, this is available on the Pearson website, which I've shared the link in the chat with people as well. We've almost got like a low, a medium, and a high set of recommendations that if somebody's wanting to develop a suite, what are the minimum operating standards compared to high performance standards, which is a recommendation alongside the qualification. But you don't have to have that. And I think that's key, is that lots of people can look at this and go, oh my goodness, it's technology. I'm so afraid of it. I'm so scared. I don't know how to set it up. I don't know where to get started with this. And, we're not saying here that you have to go out and spend thousands and thousands of pounds on a brand new suite. But if people are thinking about esports education and bringing it into the classroom, that might be upgrading 3 of the graphics cards in 3 of the PCs that you have already so you can play Rocket League. Or it might be looking at an existing games design or games development or IT suite that actually, as a school, you're purchasing new anyway. For an extra few £100 per machine, you can get to that minimum level so that students can actually have an opportunity. And that's one of the key things with esports is accessibility. I think is it's so accessible, it's so inclusive, regardless of where you're from, what your age is, your gender, any disabilities. You can have adaptive technology. We're providing this platform for people to take part in competition, to take part in a form of active media, and to enhance and enrich their studies. But if you haven't got access to the tech in the first place, that might be where people need to start around, thinking about digital strategies and digital futures. Esports can fit into that. And an example that I'll give you there would be in the UK at the moment, we're developing lots of institutes of technology, and there's lots of funding available for these institutes of technology. There are all sorts of agendas around the world for different things, and one of those might be digital, one of those might be STEM careers, one of those might be engineering. And an example of that in the UK would be we are starting a student racing league from next September. So anyone who's looking at funding around institutes of technology, engineering, STEM careers, well, you can engineer through sim racing. You can engineer through motorsport using sim racing rigs. So I think for people that are just starting out, I would say don't be afraid of that. It definitely translates. There are definite opportunities. But I think the more and more people, just like the people on this call today, that are getting involved in esports and are really sort of raising those standards and increasing awareness, that's key to developing talent for the future, of course, in esports and performance, but then also developing the future talent and the wider workforce. I think that's where, as educators, we have a real key role to play.
That's awesome.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. Like tech, that leads right into tech to the future. And actually, we just got $2 million from Congressman Rush's earmark money to build out a workforce development floor. And I pitched it as couch with our esports program. So we're going to bring the passion and the competition and all of the fantastic community service that our esports students are doing. So like they're playing games in Africa, but our kids here, they're like, we send them to the hospitals with organizations called Gamers Outreach, and they build Xboxes, and they really, I think that's so important that you're doing that, Gabriel, that giving them something to do that connects them to each other beyond the game is amazing. But to answer your question, Brandon, in my experience, and what's been super helpful for me has been companies like AWS, who are our sponsors. They run a deep racer program. So that's a great competition that also teaches AI. Companies like SHI has done build outs all across this nation. So when we just ask them, you know, what are the best ones that you're looking at? What are some common themes? What are the standards on the graphics cards? Like, do I need a 3080 Ti or can I get by with something else? You know, those types of your resources can come from unexpected spaces, especially, and SHI in particular has a contract with a company that will help you write grants to get the funding that you need to buy the equipment that you need. So they're all in. And there's other organizations that I think one thing that I did was I actually went to visit, you know, UCI Irvine. I went to visit Joey at Shenandoah. They've got a fantastic esports program there, and they are couched in their business school. So that's another distinction in the U.S. Since we sort of grew organically, like we didn't have like in Korea, they had rules in 2000 around electronic sports, really regimented rules. We didn't have that. We just sort of grew up organically in different spots in the country. So when I was building out our program, I went to visit and tried to sort of, you know, choose what was working well. And everyone in this space is so open and so giving that I find it's one of the best things you can do is just talk to your peers. And everybody wants everyone to succeed. You know, a rising tide raises all boats. So I think that, you know, workforce development and esports are a natural fit. Yeah. Unreal Engine has a fantastic program. Unity has a fantastic program. AWS, Google, Amazon, you know, connecting those certificate programs to gamification and offering a new way to teach the free existing tech training is, I think that's what I'm really excited about.
Yeah, I think that, you know, as a company that literally goes out to develop and cultivate that ecosystem with design, one of the interesting things that we tend to see is, you know, the obvious typical question: what is everybody else doing? Especially if they're just very new, they've got a group of students that have shown interest, and they're like, "I said yes. I have no idea what I'm doing," which is 9 times out of 10 what's happening. But we have the ability to be able to educate and talk about, hey, you know, on this property, we're doing this. So you don't have to spend X amount of dollars to get your foot off the ground. You know, or if you've got a budget of X, Y, and Z, then yeah, we can, you know, we're doing this, this, and this on these properties, and they're succeeding here. One of the cool things from a tech perspective that I see is, you know, we thrive on trying to find those students to bring them into our workforce, because this is literally the epitome of the clientele that we're looking for to involve, from an engineering perspective, from an install perspective, from a development perspective. It's just literally a perfect match. And we tend to drive and strive to look for those students that excel, to be able to bring them on board. We have internship programs, and we have those kinds of availabilities for students. And it really, you know, back in the day when you were looking through engineering programs, now you're looking at esports programs for these students because it's directly involved in tech. So one of the things that I would ask you guys as the cultivators of these ecosystems, what are you guys doing to engage companies with students and building that foundation for them to move forward?
Okay, so I mean, here at QMC, you know, one of our big things is engaging industry for sure, and then the same, you know, Callum, Barnsley, from where you were, and because of the situation in terms of QMC's position and Barnsley's position in the ecosystem in the UK, we're quite lucky that we are able to attract these, you know, the industry people in, both in terms of investment for equipment and kit and tech, There's a lot of companies out there that are desperate to get into esports in some way or another, and education offers them that opportunity at a cost-effective level. As opposed to, if you look at some of the deals that are being done with sponsorship and branding, with pro teams, we're talking big bucks, and education gives them a chance to sort of like get in and get a feel for it and then develop from there, which I know companies like Yo-Yo Tech have done here at QMC. HyperX are very heavily involved, and we've got HP and all of these different companies. And I think in terms of the students and the engagement with the industry that they're looking for, yes, they love the kit, but it is that it is the pro orgs that they want to be engaged with, and we're very lucky, and hopefully we'll have another LinkedIn Live to discuss this further. In that QMC is a partner with Fnatic and their college academy program, and that is amazing. It really is. The students get so much from it, and we took a handful of them up to Fnatic's HQ in London before Christmas. 3 of those students had no plans to go to university, and that was the inspiration. That was the kicking point, which is great, but at the same time, not for me, because I've suddenly had a rush of personal statements to go through, check references to write, and all sorts of paperwork that goes with it. So yeah, that's so important, and I think a lot of those orgs, Excel Guild, they've also realized that, and they've come to the table with recognizing that they need to get into the education system, because they've got a pool of talent waiting in not just the competitive playing, not even that, but in the skill set that can be used in their organizations for careers, and they are, they're slowly waking up to that realization, and then you've got the crossover, with sort of like companies like Game Plan who are kind of like bringing their tech into the classroom and into tutorials and into training and coaching. The ecosystem, like Callum said, is just growing and growing, but we're still shaping it. It's still being shaped. We're not quite there. It's not a happy, even playing field by a long shot. But it's the small inroads that that are making the difference, and hopefully we can carry that forward. Not just in the UK, but everywhere else in the world. In Africa, and we are a friendly community, the esports community. I've spoken to Gabriel many times about supporting projects in Africa, as well as other people there. And that's what we're here to do, because we can all learn from each other, learn our mistakes. I don't think it's a win or lose, it's a win or learn. And that's something that we're all going through right now.
No, that's, I don't know if it's a point to come in, but it's great to hear from you, because I've known you two for quite some time now. I've been pestering you for a while, so it's great to see you again, and I'm sure I'll meet you in a couple of weeks' time in Nottingham. One of you, I think Callum, definitely I'll see you.
Yes. Yeah, I think just further to Nick's point there, and again, Gabriel, thank you. I'll pick up on that as well. Definitely is. Whilst we've got the esports businesses and the traditional games businesses that it's key to connect our students to, again, in this translates around the world, is that as Nick mentioned, there are lots of people that are trying to understand esports or come into esports, but they might not understand how to do that. So I think as people who are already involved, and especially around education programs that we're developing, we have this real opportunity to connect other businesses, other industries with our students. And again, I go back to that point that doesn't have to be esports. That what we have is we have this nursery slope of tech agile young people who've got this reservoir and armory of skills that employers need, and they don't have to be esports employers. So I think, again, if people might be scared of that, and they might go, how can we develop a partnership with Fnatic? Like what Nick and the guys down there have done is amazing, but that I don't want people to come from a place where they go, oh well, Fnatic have already got a partnership, so they're not going to partner with us. They might do. So I would say ask the question. But then on the second point as well is think about the people that you already engage with as an educational establishment. Who are the who are the companies and businesses that you already engage with that you can actually connect with and provide some of these different and diverse opportunities through the amazing things that the students are doing on these education programs. And then, yes, as well, definitely, I'll see you in Nottingham on the 10th. What we're referring to there on the 10th of February, as British Esports, we host an Esports in Education Summit every year. This year, it's on the 10th of February in Nottingham. So if people are in the UK or near the UK, you can attend in person. But it's a hybrid event, so we'll be streaming that live, and it's free to attend online. So if people want to reconnect, continue the conversation, I'll put a link in so that people can register for free tickets for that as well.
Yeah, awesome. Sorry, go on, April. Sorry.
I was just going to say, one of the coolest company connection we did recently was with Kevin Fair, who's an entrepreneur in the Chicago area. We took a group of kids to see the LCS, and Riot did an amazing job entertaining the kids and showing them the booth and the networking and the behind the scenes. They got to take pictures with the trophy and got to see the media, all the work that you do, Brandon. They got to see who really made that experiential, the lighting, the video, the fireworks. And we're starting a new degree program at Illinois Tech called Game Design and Experiential Media. So we're blending, and our esports programs can be really connected. So we're a tech school. So we're really going to be leaning into the technology that makes those big productions wow factors. And not unlike, our business school is probably going to jump on the board down the line. But right now, I think ours is one of the most tech-focused degrees around esports that you'll be able to see.
That's awesome. Go ahead, Gabriel.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that. I mean, I've heard you lots mention about big companies, but in Africa, we don't necessarily have the big companies joining in because, I mean, the esports space is started with a lot of smaller organizations, but the smaller organizations are great community networks. We have the likes of, in Ghana, I can give good examples, a food company, Kokai, and what they do is they sponsor the Minecraft tournament that we have. And that is a good way of educating kids and getting the brand in front of the kids. And from there, they get the chance to see how the nuts are created. We've also got a new esports organization coming up, Yetra, which has got a facility where it's a modern e-blue facility in Ghana. So the kids can then have the opportunity to win prizes from our Minecraft competition to participate in different events in the e-blue facility, which is super ultra modern. So there are things like that the small business communities are gelling up to build, and some of them are actually gamers. So we're building a community where gamers are growing their business and advertising through esports. So it might be a different style, but we are getting there.
That's fantastic. As we kind of come to the end, to the end of the hour and whatnot, the conversation's been fantastic. I know that there's been a ton of chatting in the comments of just, how they can get a hold of you guys. I've seen a lot of connections going back and forth already that you guys have been working through, which is fantastic. There's a ton of stuff going on. Especially with the British Esports going on there. I see that the link is there. But truly leveraging our community at ESTA is a fantastic way to be able to develop and grow. And, I say that obviously being a member and full-hearted supporter of the ESTA and what they're doing. But the reality of it is the only way we're going to grow in esports is if we generate that ecosystem and just cultivate what we have and just grow together. I know that there's going to be a couple of announcements coming up. Save the dates for our esports conference, the Esports Next in 2023, which is going to be in Chicago. That's August 21st and 22nd. Be there or be square for sure. It's always a good time. It's a blast. Make sure that you join the ESTA as a member. The links are in here, and it's just a fantastic time because we get to have conversations like this. We get to meet amazing people and just grow the community one person at a time. So I thank you all for your time today and just everything in the conversation. It's been fantastic, and appreciate it, guys.
Thank you. Nice meeting you.
Thanks, everyone. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks, everyone. Let's go.